Hi everyone, I'm Chris Birch from Modiphius, and this is...
Hi, I'm John. I'm the Wargames Manager from Modiphius.
So we're going to answer a few questions from the community today, and the camera's going to be looking at some of the miniatures, and you're still looking at unpainted stuff. It's everything off with the pro painting team at the moment, so we'll be doing a big reveal of those next. So we're going to run through the questions. Steve Hurricane Rana asked about wondering how faction groups are going to work. Obviously, there's only a few from each of the group that you can see at the moment. Will it be a random collection of models, or you're going to have armies, e.g. survivors, Minutemen? Will someone choosing a Minutemen army look vastly different than a survivor army, or would you just be adding models willy-nilly?
You want me to field that one?
Okay.
Okay, so yes, there will be thematic groupings. We're starting with three factions at launch, which are the Brotherhood of Steel, the Super Mutants, and the Survivors. So the Survivors are comprised of a mix of the Vault Dwellers and then the people they meet in the wilderness.
Like the Minutemen.
And that's an interesting case. So they are kind of split into different sub-factions. So you have the Survivors, the Vault Dwellers, so Dogmeat and the two Soul Survivors. But then they will also have subgroups such as the Minutemen, some of the characters,
We've got
the main characters.
Riley's Rangers coming.
Sure.
As well.
So that kind of shows there will be some factions will be quite distinct. So the Brotherhood of Steel are basically just the Brotherhood. They'll all be knights, paladins wearing the Brotherhood armor. Other factions such as the Survivors will be a bit more mixed, and there are some that actually cross lines. So the Gunners, I believe that's a box set that crosses two factions. Mm-hmm. So they work with Survivors and Raiders, I want to say.
Yeah.
Maybe. Is that right?
They're more the Raiders type,
okay,
I think.
fine.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Yes, there are some core factions that are very distinct. Mm-hmm. There are some models that kind of tread the path between the two. One of the things we're also keen to kind of emphasize, and this may answer some future questions, battle mode and story mode. So story mode is very narrative driven, and that's a bit more free flowing. So you could actually start to create your own factional groupings there potentially, or you might encounter different people in the Wasteland. Battle mode is the more clean tournament setting, and that will be a little bit more regimented. So we will actually produce specific lists that say you can use this model, this model, this model. So it kind of comes down to what you want to do with the game. One of the things we're really trying to push with Fallout is that it's a game that could be played in a different set where it always uses the same core rules, the same experience, but depending on whether you're a kind of a clean, hardcore comp guy or girl versus a more narrative flowing, having that experience.
Because obviously, some people are going to want to just feel a classic army, like just want Brotherhood of Steel, just want Survivors. But I know from the survey we did that lots of people just want to throw down lots of different characters, and there's lots of characters you could add to Brotherhood. So obviously all the characters that come out will have a kind of like not an alignment but a sort of faction orientation, or they may be neutral, so you can put them with whoever. Obviously like the Soul Survivor, the male female version can go with anyone, so I think there'll be a lot of variety in what you can do, isn't there? And
also you can build your list, so you could have what I keep calling the Avengers list. So you could go for the Survivors who have all named characters and have a real there'll be points wise quite expensive, so it'll be quite a small force,
like the dungeon party,
but they'll be like all heroes, or you could go for a more generic a mob of nameless raiders who are just
in which case that's when you end up with like 20-30 figures ish.
10 to 17, but sure, we'll go with 20 or 30.
I'm always going to push the boundaries, so
sure.
Cool. All right, let's move on. So Daniel Boychke, hope you said that right, says, does terrain affect the game? Some cover rules or difficulties related to terrain on the game board?
Yep, absolutely. Cover is very much part of the game. So there are two kind of real, at a very simple level, there's two different types of terrain and the ways you interact with it. There's what I call line of sight blockers. So on the table we've got some of these big buildings that we've built, and these you can climb up them, you can jump off them, that kind of thing. But they will very much block line of sight, so a model couldn't shoot through them. So that's a kind of a line of sight blocking piece. Or we have the scatter scenery that we see here. So that in that case, a pile of burned out old sofas and cupboards. They still give some protection. So they will
Nuka-Cola machines.
Or the Nuka-Cola cola machines. Yeah, they will block some line of sight.
Sorry, just to interrupt. This is the one that's we've not put the bits on, so you can actually see the internal workings. Yeah.
Compared to,
so you can have a ruined version or a
complete
clean version.
It's a modular 4-part kit, because that's what you need for scenery.
There's lots of different scenic scatter blisters coming, and there's one big box set every wave of scenic pieces as well.
So those pieces will be harder to cross, so you will suffer a movement penalty for crossing them. They will provide a modifier to your hit check because they are intervening, so there's a chance that the bullet wings off of them instead of hitting you. And they will also provide a small armor buff to models stand behind them. We're not going to go into the full details right now. We're going to do the full rules breakdown.
Okay, great.
But they're very much important. And there is a height advantage now.
Yes.
Unless that's been taken out of the rules again, but as far as I'm aware, you do now get a bonus for being
There's a height
as
advantage,
well.
So, William Mead asks, are you doing releases ETA for expansions based on the DLCs Far Harbour and Nuka World specifically? So, yes, we are. there are going to be themed... No, I'll say there are going to be themed box sets based around all the major DLCs, which will bring new creatures... new sort of sub-factions, like for example Nuka World will come with some new raiders, new buildings, that kind of thing, potentially some new rules and cards. They're coming later next year, and there'll be kind of big expansions for the game that kind of roll out lots of new features. We are working our way through sculpts, and we're already doing like the Enclave and Riders Rangers, etc.
How many sculpts are we up to so far?
70 something,
quite a lot of sculpts,
and it's growing by the
day.
week, literally, yeah. So there's, we're working our way back. I know we're briefing Frank Horrigan at the moment, who's a Super Mutant favourite, and lots of other characters from the previous games. Are there plans for multi-part kits for the factions? Hardened plastic, or HPS as it's often called, is a really, really, really complex and expensive process to make, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it requires a different set of software.
Yep.
It's massively expensive. It requires a lot of extra work, and it can go horrifically expensively wrong. So we're getting everything right first in resin, and then we may well do that later on for the more successful the kits that we know that people are going to want a lot of.
There will be some potential for specific kits that would suit that material. So something like, we're talking about the Survivors having a whole bunch of distinct characters. They don't work very well as a styrene set because you only ever have one.
Whereas maybe like the Raiders would be
a generic Raider set with customizable parts. That's a lot more of a sensible option. So I think we certainly would love to. I mean, I'm keen to push styrene where possible, but it's about the right material for the right kit.
So, we're just being sensible and doing it at the right stages. So, Jordan Minkov says, will there be a release of every power armor from Fallout 4? Yes, we're currently doing the T-51 and the T-45 are in the sculpting queue.
And the Raider
power armor, which is, I've seen a draft, it's looking cool. And there's a Super Mutant.
I think there's more power armor than other sculpts in the game as far as
there is, at the moment. So, so let's move on. The next set of questions. Paul Bannon asks about terrain density. So it's, how would you describe
so we're playing on a 3x3 board, which is a good size because it fits on your dining room table, most dining room tables. And it just means you kind of get into the combat a bit sooner. We get to the like, nobody wants to spend that first turn of the game just walking forward. So we've sort of skipped that phase and we start a little bit closer. In terms of terrain density, I personally am finding with playtesting and general play, you're looking at about 6 to 8 pieces of what I call the line of sight blocking. So the buildings or larger ruins that get in the way. And again, 6 to 8 of the more scatter pieces. That gives a nice flow between, because you always have that counterplay between range combat and melee combat. And if one is advantage against the other, it can be quite tilting or quite upsetting for people. So that kind of gives a good fluid mix. And I mean, if we have a look at the board, these scatter pieces, they're maybe 4 inches across, 3-4 inches. That's about the right size for kind of an area of scatter.
And we should point out that we're doing the big Red Rocket set, which is a scenic set that's going to come with a paper map or like a big poster map of the Red Rocket terrain. And it comes with a resin rocket. It comes with the resin pumps as well, and a Nuka-Cola machine. So this is a set we've worked on with Battle Systems, who do this great range of clipped together pre-coloured card, and it's all compatible with their existing range. And I don't really want to ruin that. There is an interior here with an armour rig. It looks really cool. So you can lift off and take the battle inside. And we've built these other buildings with some of their other kits, which includes, I think, their city kit and the Shantytown kit. So it's very flexible, works really well. And I know a lot of people want to
play on the inside if you want to play indoors. So I built them with lift-off roofs.
Yeah.
Been learning how to use the system properly.
We're obviously doing a lot of scenic scatter. We're doing some a scenic kit that helps you upgrade your buildings if you're doing scratch building stuff, or if you're just using other buildings that you've bought. There will be a lot of bigger pieces like cars, like we've got the Rex sedan coming, we've got military barricades, we've got fusion core generators, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of kind of bigger pieces that are focused, and we've got a Wasteland scenic set coming first, and then there's a settlement scenic set, a military scenic set that's kind of really basically broadens out your battlefield, including mad things like the APC. There's going to be Crash, Vertibird, and all kinds of stuff. So
about 16 pieces is a good, and a good mix of the two. And
there's lots of other great ranges out there that do post-apocalyptic building. So what we're going to really focus on is the iconic stuff that is famous in the Fallout universe, like things like Red Rocket, Sanctuary Hills. We're going to do the buildings there and other big pieces, and then and give you all the little things that you can scatter across your existing board and make it really pop out as Fallout. So Blair Mackey says, will you also be attending to the diorama scene building market, or solely focus on the gaming side? And I think that comes out in so we are trying to come up with this little kit of, there's like a wall mounted turret, for example, in the first Wasteland kit, so you can stick it on the wall of your existing building. Sort of small fixtures and fittings that we're going to create as a sprue for that community, a bit like we're also going to be doing the modders sprue of weapons and gear and heads for those people who want to customize their figures.
And I think sort of to kind of dovetail off that as well, every single Fallout miniature we've sculpted has its own unique resin base. However, the miniatures do come separated from the base. So if you are a diorama builder and you obviously don't want them to have a base stuck in the middle of your diorama, you can absolutely, the models are separated. You can build a diorama with all the pieces and not have to worry about that.
So it's perfect.
They're not fixed to the base, essentially. Yeah. In the same way, some people have been asking about, can I put my own bases? So all our bases are 30, 40, 50 millimeters, although I think there are some 60s coming as well. So you can use discs or rolled shoulder bases or whatever of that same dimension and do a more your own version of a thematic base. You don't have to use the bases, but like I say, every single model comes with a unique sculpt, so there's already kind of nice thematic basing going on. But if you like to build your own, you are free to do so.
Yeah. Okay, so Marcus Narf asks, I'm very curious about how the campaign mode will work. We'll have to convert miniatures all the time as they lose arms and legs and get different weapons and armors. Will there be some kind of territory management? All that stuff. How does the campaign work? Now, I know there's a campaign system and settlement system which we're going to come to, so we won't cover that today. But in terms of how things work with actual models and gear.
It's not a WYSIWYG system, which is a word I've bandied around the office several times now. You don't actually have to represent everything on the model. It would be nice if you do. We are doing weapon packs, I believe, so you can upgrade your models. Obviously, it's quite tricky if you're playing a game, and every game they lose an arm or they pick up a new gun. You either have to have a lot of models or the ability to. I
think our goal has been to create a range of great-looking miniatures to give you a variety of different miniatures for the Super Mutant faction. But we're not going to make Preston Garvey with every conceivable gun he could carry, and we're not going to force you to buy every conceivable miniature. But we wanted to.
It would be nice from a marketing perspective.
Well, of course, yeah.
But
we do want to give you the options to get. Certain miniatures like Soul Survivor will have different versions. Some of the key characters will have versions where maybe in a slightly different outfit or a key different gun.
But it's not WYSIWYG, so you don't have to. But you can if you want to. And like I say, we'll
certainly
be
for
doing
the T6s, there are numerous T6s with different weapons at the moment, so you'll have the option to get the ones that you want. Jacob Smith says, what exactly is the story behind not being able to make new Vas Vegas models? At the moment, it's not part of our license, simple as that. It may change in the future. At the moment, we've got more than enough to keep ourselves manically busy with Fallout 3 and 4, as well as 1 and 2 and Brotherhood of Steel, the PlayStation title, etc. So we're just focusing on that, and if maybe if it's a big success, that will change. So
and I think it's Fallout 4 and 3 are the iconic Fallout look that's in the kind of the current mindset. Some of us do go back to Fallout 1 and 2, but it's obviously about doing what people kind of immediately recognise to start.
I know there's a huge demand for the Vegas models,
and they're coming.
Who knows? Yeah, we'll see in the future. So David Galloway is, how does single player works and a fight between humans and Deathclaw, Wasteland creatures, turns out? Well, probably I guess we're going to play a game. We should do a game with
of the AI mode.
Yeah. Well, a single player mode. Yeah.
Yeah. AI mode. Yeah.
So that's going to be coming. AI is the very final piece of the puzzle that's coming together behind the scenes. So we'll be doing a reveal of how AI mode works in the next week or two. But it's really fun. So I've been enjoying some of the games. Carl Yanis says, going off this, how is the AI's group selected and how is the AI deck built and used? Again, we'll come back to that in a special AI session. Daniel Bulk says, does the terrain affect the game? We've covered that in terms of.
And again, we're going to do in-depth videos of each sort of specific area of the game, so we'll go through the exact kind of scenery rules as we go. But scenery is very important.
Liam Thorenson says, will there be rules for irradiated terrain? I know certainly we were playing that one scenario where there is.
We did, yeah. So there was a scenario we were playing where it was a fort that had been essentially defended by putting nuclear barrels everywhere. So yes, irradiated terrain can be a thing.
And at the moment, that is a kind of ranged attack, isn't it? Is that right?
It's got an area of effect, yeah.
So it's like an area effect within
move too close to it, you start taking rad damage and you're having a bad time.
But of course, if you're super mutants or Institute, you're just fine, aren't you? You're happy as Larry.
Yeah, so it's very scenario driven. So again, there were kind of the two modes of the game. There's the battle mode. Well, there's four modes of the game, but the two kind of the real core differences are the narrative mode versus the battle mode.
Yeah,
you'll start to see that a lot more in narrative mode because it'll be a specific scenario about attacking the base, or there happens to be a nuclear spill or whatever, versus battle mode, which we want to be a little bit cleaner and it's a lot more symmetrical as a scenario. So certainly I'd expect to see it more in the narrative, but who knows? We might write an awful tournament scenario where you are trying to dodge your way past the nuclear barrels.
Yeah, great. And it says he also goes on to say, with the pre-order being later, should we expect a later release date? Yes, at the moment we're expecting to ship in January. And retailers would have the launch in March. Okay. William T. Mead, are you doing a release ETA for expansions? Based on we've covered that as well. Caleb asks, anything related to special or VATs? Lol, like aiming at body parts. There is.
Bit of both.
Do you want to briefly explain how that works?
VATs, if you watch the video that we've previously shot, which we'll link to in the show description if Steve's onto it.
Yeah.
Good man. Well done. Throw Steve under the bus there. VATs is very much a thing. Only heroic characters use it. And again, we'll do breakdown videos explaining this in detail again, but check that video out because we do go over it.
It's all about the purple dice.
It's all about the purple special dice.
Yeah.
So yes, VATs is in there. In terms of shooting out specific body parts, that's also in the game. So specific weapons, specific attacks will actually target limbs, extremities. I think at the moment it's just legs and arms. I don't think we've gone as far as heads yet. And basically having your leg... a good one is if a shotgun critical shots you, there is a chance that it essentially blows your arm off. Yeah. And that then has an ongoing negative effect for the rest of the game because having a kind of a mauled bloody stump instead of an arm is quite a negative when it comes to combat.
Yeah, it's not helpful. Okay, right. So Anthony asks, most important, how much will it cost? Well, you'll find out very, very, very soon. Yes, obviously we're trying to get as fair price as possible. Will there be Harold with Apple or as a tree with Quest? Not yet. We'll have to come back to that. Does mechanics change while exploring vaults? It'll be the same game.
Yep, same game. But you can play underground.
Yeah,
definitely.
And there will be some underground missions, and we are bringing out an underground terrain set for the vaults. Will there be a deck or list of unexpected events triggered by Wanderers and his companions? There is an event deck. Well, there's several decks which I think we have to come back to explain it better, but there are several decks that are involved in exploration and
but yes,
the events.
Random Wasteland encounters absolutely can happen.
Yeah.
Again, it'll be a narrative thing, not a battle thing. So if you're playing your narrative games, who knows, a Radstorm might kick off, a Deathclaw might suddenly pop out of the ground, you might find a random survivor and help them out. But no, very much narrative and campaign setting is all about that sort of thing.
Yeah. Alexander Lyashenko asks, will there be some rules preview like a beta? They all have to go through Bethesda for approval, of course. The design of the rulebook's been approved. All the text is currently being edited. So once we get to a final laid out rulebook, then yes, that will go out on preview. But be patient; it will be a bit of time. We have to get it right. It has to be signed off. Raiders and Enclave release plans. They are both April, May, June time with the next whole mass of releases. And once everyone's got their Wave 1 order, then we'll probably look at doing a special pre-order for Wave 2. So with some good deals, special bonuses, that kind of thing. Again,
exclusive figures.
Oh yes, some exclusive figures. There is a special exclusive figure coming with the pre-order, which you probably know about by the time you watch this. Jake asked, what kind of physical retail locations could I expect to find this glorious treasure here in the forgotten land of Oz? We are working, or going to be working with distributors, and hopefully they'll be picking up. So you should be able to get it in your local store. Just make sure to go into the store and say, please make sure you get this. He says, if I have a unit in melee combat, can I have a ranged unit also attack that enemy? And if so, is there a chance of hitting my own melee dude?
Yes, very much so.
Yes.
Shooting into combat it's easier to hit because there's more bodies, but unfortunately not all of those bodies belong to the bad guys.
And it's like a 50-50 chance.
It's not even 50-50. It depends on how many models, but
course,
yes, there is a sliding scale.
It's very simple little mechanic.
It's a simple roll, but yes, you do very much stand the chance of shooting the boss in the head.
Miniature quality for us painters. The difference between the resin and plastic casts, asks Jacob. So what you're seeing here is the resin test production model. So these aren't even from final production molds. These were just run quickly for the Gen Con show. So there will be a slight improvement on this. So but in terms of painting quality, because you've done some painting.
I've done a bit of painting. It's a resin model. Resin tends to be one of the highest quality sort of fidelity to the original sculpts you get. One of the good things I think about this range is it's quite big. So even a human model on a 30mm base, like our Night Patrol here, that's quite a large figure. I think we went to 32mm scale. 32mm, So it's 32mm scale, but what does that mean? Scale is a wonderfully ambiguous term. But they're crammed with detail. They are fairly true. We've done the comparison shot with the T60. I think they're fine. I've really enjoyed painting them. I like working with resin. PVC, I think you will see a slight reduction in detail only because of the very nature of PVC as a material, and we do have to do some.
How does it compare to metal? So if someone's used to painting metal figures.
So, I love painting metal figures because I've been painting for far too long. I think resin does give a slightly truer cast because you don't get quite as much shrinkage. Metal does tend to shrink a little bit away as it cools and sort of settles. So I think, it's one of those things that it's often seen as kind of a PR gambit, but no, I think it's as true to the original sculpt, and these are all sculpted digitally anyway, so there is no physical model to compare it to. But they're great.
Okay,
so really enjoyed it. And we're going to do a lot of painting videos. Don't worry. Can't wait.
That's right. Okay, so will there be character upgrades? Says Brian Ingram, like Frostgrave, and how will perks change dice rolls? So there are.
Yes, there are. So there are perks and mods in the game. So, for example, a Soul Survivor could be heroic, so that's kind of the first jumping on point. That's where they start to get beyond just your average grunt. So in the forces we've been playing with, your knights would probably not be heroic, but the paladin in the T60 would be. Then there would be the perks on top of that. So one of them, for example, is Hunter. And what that means is the Hunter is very good with long-range weapons at range, and they get bonus effect dice when they're shooting with the weapon at long range. So if you give him like a hunting rifle or a cool laser rifle, he gets really good bonuses. And same with weapons, there'll be mods.
And there's and leader cards, of course, pumps up your main leader.
Yep, and and they actually have like a passive aura that can affect the friends around them as well. So you can actually enhance the whole crew depending on which perks and which leader abilities you give them.
Howard Kenwood says, what format will the tournament standard be based on? And will there be limited edition pieces or as prizes at tournaments? I could probably say, certainly on limited edition stuff, we've got a what we call an event character that's going to be part of the pre-order. And this miniature is available as part of the pre-order, as part of some of the special bundles. And you'll also be able to get them at shows like, hopefully, maybe we'll be at Adepticon, Salute in the UK, etc., Gen Con and other events. Also, when we do another pre-order, you'd also be able to get them. So it's not exclusive, deal, but it is a kind of limited type of item. So it's possible that we would also include them as part of the tournament.
I think the thing. So again, there's there's two kind of types of play. There's the competitive play and the narrative play. And they both use the same rules, and they both behave in a very similar way, but it's about the kind of the focus of the two. Mm-hmm. With regards to organised play on that sort of note, then we will absolutely be doing a tournament scene. We'll be working with the community. So, I'm actually drafting it at the moment. That will be the kind of the jumping off point, but we will evolve that as, feedback comes in. With regards to prize support for organised play, I'm all for it. What I don't want to do is ever have that situation where you can win something at a tournament that makes you better than anybody else in terms of gameplay. So there will never be a model that's like, oh, you can only win this by winning a tournament and it makes your gang better. So we're more interested in kind of increasing the quality of your bling, I suppose, is an awful word to use. But yeah, so, the two-player set, your starter set ships with cardboard tokens. We are looking into the ideas about maybe you'll be able to win upgraded acrylic tokens or maybe even metal tokens, range rulers, shiny cards,
card decks,
all that kind of thing. So it's like you'll still be playing the same game, but people will know that you are a big, a big shot in the Wasteland because you've got a cool, slightly aesthetically different set of tools that you can play with. But so very, very much on the improve your aesthetic rather than, oh, you've won, have a better thing for winning.
Yeah. Okay, so Paul Marshall says, have I understood it right that I can play solo against an enemy that is controlled by just a deck of cards, no other human required? Yes.
Yep.
Yes, there is an AI system that controls the enemy, and it will control both blips that move around, and you've got to discover what they are or maybe avoid them. And then there's also active enemies, so you can actually decide to play against an active enemy force who will react to you as well. And again, we're going to come back to AI and how that works.
I think, just quickly to touch on that, each type of creature will have a unique reaction type. So super mutants will behave very differently to Brotherhood. And what that means is if you play Brotherhood, for the sake of argument, but you fancy picking up some super mutants to paint, that's great, because as well as having a fun new painting project, you've also increased your AI mode because you've now got a new enemy type that behaves differently to something else that was running AI. So it kind of, each one, like each set of miniatures is almost a tiny expansion pack that slightly changes your AI experience.
Yeah. Ryan says, what's the plan on expanding out of Fallout 4? Enclave would be good to see. Well, we know we're doing then. I seem to remember them being planned earlier. NCR, be especially interesting. Of course, we've covered that. And so, of course, yes, there's lots more factions coming even beyond the next three. There's a lot of sort of sub-factions that you can incorporate into your existing factions and build your own, effectively, kind of survivor group, depending on what flavour you want. I know people have been asking about robots and creatures, and we've been talking about that in the last few days. So technically, you could play a force of robots or creatures, but maybe not in the official tournament.
Depends.
Mode.
I mean, it comes down to balance. So the tournament mode is designed to be a balanced playing field. For narrative mode, folio boots. You can have a full force of robots. I mean, you could even have a mercenary Deathclaw for the sake of argument. If that's what you want, who am I to tell you how to have fun? Like, absolutely. For competition, I think it needs to be right. It needs to be balanced. If we can find a way to balance it, then of course. I mean, who doesn't want a giant army of serious robots, and I think Chris would prefer it if we did, so ultimately he's my boss, so we'll try and make it work.
We'll see. There's lots of videos of people having 50 Deathclaws versus the Brotherhood of Steel, or I mean, why not?
Absolutely,
if it can be done.
Yeah, we'll find a way eventually.
Yeah, and there's lots of great, and we have got a whole robot set coming out as well. I apologise, I can't read the name because looks like it's in Cyrillic. It would be interesting to know, how soon do you think stuff from the games that take place on the West Coast will be released? Well, as I said, we are working our way back through the games. The scenarios are generic enough that if you want to be on the West Coast and playing out a game there, you can be. We're not saying this is in Boston. No. You can't do anything else. It's very much this is a atomic facility or this is a Brotherhood of Steel base or whatever. So, okay. Right, so Kane says, will we get story and lore concerning other parts of the States and the rest of the world which we don't really hear about or know? At the moment, well, the rulebook you get in the base game is very much limited to rules and some very simple introduction to how you should expect the factions to play to help you choose which ones to play. There'll be a deluxe rulebook coming in the summer next year that will bring together all the key rules that have been released through the expansions and maybe more advanced rules as well. There will be limited lore. It's pretty much going to be drawn from the existing games, and we're going to be drawing on the storyline. I don't think you'll be seeing anything from outside of the video games. We have to be careful that we don't create stuff that paints Bethesda into a corner for anything they might be doing. And okay, so what next? John Hodgson says, what platform can we expect to see this selling on, such as Kickstarter or retail sites, or from us? So there's no Kickstarter. We're selling it as a pre-order directly from our store, which is probably live as you read this, depending on how Steve's ninja video editing skills are. And,
no pressure.
No weekend. It's a pre-order. And starting on our site with some special bundle deals and offers. And then from around early December, you'll find that your local gaming store will have all the information it needs to start a pre-order as well. We're going to be locating all the local retailers that are taking part in running demos and also selling and doing the pre-order on a big vault map as well. So do encourage your store to get in touch and ask to be on our map. And you'll be able to go in and order from your local store if you prefer to support them, which of course we do encourage you to do, because they're going to be part of the whole community where we're going to be organising a lot of events as well. So Fellis says, will you be coming out with weapons and gear set so I can chop and change minis? Yes, we talked about that already. Robert says, will the models be able to be kitted out in different weapons, or do you need different models for each layout? It is abstract. It's not.
Yeah, it's not WYSIWYG, but again, we will do the weapons packs. So if there is a specific setup you want, I'm sure there'll be a way to do it.
Yeah. Daniel says, should we expect faction scenery from other Fallout games? Yes. We'll be working our way through the different sets of scenery and introducing them as we can. It takes time to develop them all. And then we have... the next. Will Raider clans be included? Rust Devils, the Pack, Disciples, Operators. Yes, so we're starting with generic Raiders, and then we're going to work our way through the different Raider groups. And as I mentioned, New Coca-Cola World will be a specific expansion that comes with another wave of Raider types as well. The contents of the basic box set, and if there will be expansions, booster packs, or whatever. So the way we're building the game is that each faction, so you'll get the starter set, which is 11 figures at the moment. might change at the last minute. That is a group of super mutants and some survivors and a brotherhood in aspirant in T60 power armor that he's cobbled together from some parts, I think, that you find in one of the scenarios. So beyond that, so then you will pick a faction. So at the moment you'll pick, I want to play the survivors. So then you there's a 7-figure survivor set,
faction core set,
which is what we call the faction core set. Or you could get the faction core set for the brotherhood or for the super mutants, and that's typically 6 or 7 figures. That is like the real basis for your faction. You get specific cards for them, and so everything you need to really start building it up.
Specific to that box set.
Yeah, and that starts building some of the settlement building as well. Then beyond that, you will pick up character expansions that will be typically 2 or 3 figures, depending on the size. So obviously a super mutant's bigger, so maybe you only get one. I know, for example, Hammer with his missile launcher comes with another super mutant hound for the super mutants, whereas you're going to see Paladin Dance and
it's got an iBot
and Elder Maxon, I believe, as their character set. And then whereas the survivors are getting Mr. Handy, Dog Meat with goggles and
Doggles,
the male Soul Survivor, as a character set. And then there's X688, Kate and Piper as another character set. So much more character led on the survivors. So then you obviously want to build up your forces more. So then there are expansion sets that are a bit more themed. So there might be a T60 Night Patrol. There might which is another T60 armor and a 2 or 3 Night Patrol in combat armor. You may get a set of Minutemen for the survivors. You may get
that's where the gunners are going to come in. I mean, it's where we'll start to see those real thematic kind of And these
the
will
kind of
be
units, like flavor units
they'll be
and
the
things.
building blocks of your army. So if
Yeah.
if you wanted to do a very Minutemen heavy force, you maybe would pick up a couple, add in the kind of Preston and the kind of the more Minutemen-y characters. And if you're like Chris and you want to do these crazy games with hundreds of models, then you'll probably be bulking that out because that's how you're going to bulk your force.
And we've got
out.
the Behemoth coming for the Super Mutants, which is a kind of unit expansion as well. We've got the Super Mutants also get the Suiciders. So they're not part of the first pre-order, but they'll be coming at the end of the first wave of releases. So your basic pre-order is going to offer you the starter set, the faction core set, and a faction character set. But then we also have 2 box sets of creatures and robots, and a set of scenery, and then various little upgrades. So the next questions are... So Alistair Crofts asks, as a fan of Power Armor, I'd like to run a mixed force of the T51s, T45s, T60s, and XO1s. Is this something I'll be able to do, or house ruling will be needed? Well, they're going to be expensive, but yes.
Certainly for narrative play.
Yeah.
For match play, for battle mode, possibly not. It really depends on how we assign the different armor types to the different models. So at the moment there is a hard cap on the number of paladins you can take, and that does then sort of limit you to specific suits. But we're still...
Is that affected by your settlement?
Not in battle mode.
Oh, in battle, okay. Yes,
battle mode is a very outside influence. But certainly for narrative mode, you could, absolutely.
Great. What are your plans for developing terrain? Will you be doing MDF or resin buildings? There are massive resin chunks of things coming that are very familiar. More vehicles, key building parts, and then we are working with Battle Systems, obviously on their terrain and supporting them as well. And we're going to work together, and we'll be doing lots of custom terrain stuff as well in our photo shoots. So you can expect to see a lot of cool stuff. When we expect to see demo teams at our local clubs and stores? Well, we're signing up a team right now. In the video,
so get in
comments,
touch.
There's a link to join up and be part of that.
Absolutely. The Vault Dwellers, as we've christened them, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. And Morris says, a source book about the Fallout world. We're going to be focusing mostly on rules, as I mentioned, and we'll be what we'll be trying to do is like talking about how each faction plays as a faction, how you use them in your strategy. Very much focused on the game, and it says and an RPG. So there is no RPG, but each of the units has all the special stats. So it wouldn't be hard actually for you to play, and a lot of our narrative missions have a bit of an RPG feel to them as you're playing characters through in small groups. So it wouldn't be hard to put that together yourself. Can we use expertise, things like hacking during a competitive game or only during the campaign?
So that depends on the scenario. It's a tricky one because some factions are natively better at hacking than others. So Super Mutants, they're not so great at the old computer skills. So we always have to make sure both players, both teams have an even shot. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just about how we kind of write our scenarios to make sure everyone feels like they've got a fair crack. Certainly when it comes to narrative mode, hacking, lockpicking, climbing, all that sort of stuff is intrinsic. It's what narrative mode is about, essentially. And one of the things you'll see a lot more with narrative is asymmetrical scenarios. So one faction will be looking to hack the computers, the other faction not so much. And then it even breaks down further. So depending on which faction you're playing, there are different sort of submissions. So in the hacking scenario we've got, the Super Mutants can't hack, but what they end up doing is observing what's happening, figuring out that whatever these weird grey boxes with flashing lights on are, they can't use them, but they're obviously important to the other guys, so then they start smashing them.
Yeah.
So that's a Super Mutant specific
So
facet.
it's not like every faction isn't a carbon copy of each other, like, with a dude that can hack but in green skin, is it?
No, they have to feel distinct. They have to feel like their own factions with their own, specific behaviours and specialisms.
Great. Okay. Hope that's been useful. We're going to be doing more walkthroughs of the game, more playthroughs, question and answers. So stick with us, and you'll learn a lot more about the game.